The 20th of February 1944. Jagdflieger Headquarters, Germany. 6:47 a.m. Winter frost blankets the windows of the requisitioned castle. Inside, Major Egon Mayer, a Luftwaffe ace with 102 victories, sips hot coffee while gazing at a map of Europe. His fighter pilots, young men with aged eyes, await orders. "Gentlemen," Mayer says, lighting a cigarette, "intelligence confirms the U.S. 8th Air Force is preparing for another mission. The weather is good over Germany. They will come. Oh, Lieutenant Kurt Gabler, Jovem Piloto de Focke-Wulf 190, Rye. Let them come, Herr Major. Each of their missions is a gift to us. The B-17 seconds are flying fortresses, yes, but P-47 escort fighters only have a range of 400 kilometers. When they reach the German border, they have to turn back. The bombers are left alone, and that's where we shoot them down. That's true. The American strategy of daytime bombing has been disastrous. Missions like Schweinfurt-Regensburg in October 1943 resulted in carnage. 60 B-17 seconds shot down. 600 crewmen killed or captured. 19% losses in a single mission. American arrogance is our greatest weapon, Mayer continues. They insist on flying during the day. They insist on attacking deep into our territory. And they insist on sending escorts they can't escort. He points to the map, drawing a line from England to Berlin. Up to this point, they have fighter jets. From here on, he draws a large circle over the heart of Germany. They are alone, in our sky, under our rules, and every bomber that enters this zone without escort is a target. It's just a matter of time and ammunition. Their pilots smile confidently. They are the best in the world at their job, shooting down 4-engine bombers. Remember, Mayer concludes, when you see American escorts turning home, it's party time. Lone bombers are like fat sheep waiting for wolves. And we are the wolves. What Mayer and the entire Luftwaffe didn't know was that on the 20th of February 1944, Americans were about to launch Operation Argument. And this time, when fighter escorts seemed to be leaving, they wouldn't be returning home. They would be positioning themselves for an ambush. And when the Luftwaffe attacked what they thought were defenseless sheep, they would find not sheep, but a deadly trap designed to do exactly what Mayer wanted, force the Luftwaffe into a battle she didn't know she couldn't win. Washington, D.C., Pentagon, October 1943. The Air Force General Staff meeting room was grim. General Henry Hap Arnold, commander of the Army Air Forces, stared at the numbers that represented the carnage. 60 bombers shot down, 600 men, he said, his voice deep. A 19% loss rate. We can't sustain this. One more week and the 8th Air Force ceases to exist. The problem was fundamental. American doctrine of precision daytime bombing required flying during the day to hit targets. But flying during the day meant engaging the Luftwaffe. And American escort fighters, like the P-47 Thunderbolt and P-38 Lightning, simply didn't have the range to accompany bombers to targets deep in Germany. We need long-range escort fighters, General Ira Eaker, commander of the 8th Air Force, insisted. It doesn't exist, Arnold replied, and we can't stop bombing. Every day we don't attack is another day for the German war industry to produce tanks and planes that will kill our soldiers on the ground. The situation seemed unsolvable. To stop bombing meant losing the war on land. To continue bombing meant losing the war in the air. Then, a young major named James Doolittle, famous for the attack on Tokyo, who now commanded the 8th Fighter Air Force, proposed something radical. "Gentlemen," he said, "what if we're thinking about this the wrong way? What if our goal isn't just to bomb, but to use bombers as bait?" Silence in the room. "Bait for what?" Arnold asked. "For the Luftwaffe," Doolittle replied, his eyes gleaming with a dangerous idea. "The only thing that forces the Luftwaffe to fight is a threat to its industrial centers. So we send bombers, knowing the Luftwaffe will attack. But this time, instead of our fighters being limited to close escort, we're giving them a new mission." He paused dramatically. "The primary mission of our escort fighters will no longer be to protect bombers. It will be to seek out and destroy the Luftwaffe wherever it may be." It was heresy. It contradicted all doctrine of escort duty. The escort's job was to stay close to the bombers, to protect them. "Jimmy, are you proposing to leave bombers unprotected to hunt enemy fighters?" Ika asked incredulously. "Not unprotected," Doolittle corrected. "Protected in a different way. Instead of waiting for wolves to attack a flock, we'll hunt wolves in their dens. When the Luftwaffe goes up to attack bombers, our fighters will intercept them long before they get close. And if some bombers are lost in the process, it's an acceptable cost if in return we permanently destroy the Luftwaffe." The math was brutal. Losing a few bombers to shoot down experienced German fighters that took years to replace, while America was producing pilots in weeks, but there was a problem: range. The P-47 still couldn't reach far enough. That's when another monster was born, the P-51 Mustang. Originally designed with an Allison engine, it was mediocre, but when British engineers fitted it with a Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, the same one used in the Spitfire, the Mustang was transformed, and with disposable fuel tanks, it could fly from London to Berlin and back. And Doolittle had a new toy. No one imagined that this seemingly suicidal doctrinal shift from protecting bombers to hunting fighters, and the arrival of an aircraft that everyone had dismissed, the Mustang, carried the seeds of American air victory. December 1943, mission to Bremen. The first application of the Doolittle doctrine was a confusing failure. 150 B-17 and B-24 bombers attacked submarine shipyards in Bremen. The escort was a combination of short-range P-47 seconds and early long-range P-51 seconds. Doolittle's order to fighter pilots was clear. Go after the Germans, don't get stuck with the bombers, destroy the Luftwaffe. But the pilots, trained for months in close escort, hesitated. When they saw 200 German fighters climbing to attack, instinct took over. They returned to the vicinity of the bombers. The result was chaos. Fighter pilots trying to protect and attack at the same time, broken formations, confused communications. The Luftwaffe exploited the confusion. They shot down 27 bombers, and, worst of all, they shot down 6 American escort fighters. The official report was humiliating. New fighter doctrine proved ineffective. Tactical confusion resulted in heavy losses of bombers and fighters. Pilots are unable to execute the dual mission of protection and attack. German ace Adolf Galland wrote in a report to Goering, "The Americans seem to lack a coherent escort strategy. Some fighters stay close, others roam. This indecision is our advantage. We can isolate and destroy both." Even American pilots hated the new tactic. "We're abandoning our brothers in the bombers," a P-51 pilot wrote home. "Doolittle doesn't understand. Our job is to protect them." Doolittle was furious, but not about tactics, about execution. He summoned all the fighter group commanders. "Listen up, you sons of bitches," he shouted. "I'll say it once. Your mission is no longer to bring all the bombers home. Your mission is to make sure no German plane ever returns home. If I hear one more pilot complaining about abandoning bombers, I'll make him fly one. Understood?" Silence. "Now go back to your men and teach them how to kill Germans, or I'll find someone who will." The 20th of February 1944. Operation Argument, beginning of Big Week. The invisible turning point came in a week that would change air warfare forever. 1,000 American bombers, escorted by 1,000 fighters, now including hundreds of long-range P-51 Mustangs, attacked German aircraft factories across Germany. And this time, fighter pilots understood the order. Major Egon Mayer, leading his grouper to intercept bombers near Leipzig, saw something he had never seen before. American fighter jets. So far away. Mustangs, 200 kilometers from the border. How is that possible? His radio crackled with reports from all over Germany. P-47 seconds over Hamburg. P-38 seconds over Frankfurt. Mustangs over Regensburg. They were everywhere. And they weren't protecting bombers. They were hunting them. When Mayer's formation attempted to climb up to attack B-17 seconds at 8,000 meters, they were intercepted at 6,000 meters by 30 P-51 seconds that appeared from the sun. It was a massacre. Mayer saw 2 of his full 190 seconds explode before he could give the order to maneuver. He tried to turn for combat, but Mustangs didn't bite. They dove, fired, climbed, repeating. "They're not fighting fair," Lieutenant Gabler shouted over the radio. "They're not turning into a dogfight." Mayer, with his 102 wins, knew exactly what was happening, and it terrified him. "They don't want a dogfight," he replied. "They want to kill us, and they're using bombers as bait to lure us into their trap." That day, the Luftwaffe lost 77 fighter planes. The Americans lost 21 bombers and 4 fighter planes. Mathematics began to change. During the 6 days of Big Week, Americans launched 3,800 bomber sorties, destroying 60% of German fighter production. But the most important number was another. The Luftwaffe lost 355 fighter planes, and, more crucially, 225 experienced pilots. Pilots who could not be replaced. General Adolf Galland, in a desperate report to Hitler, wrote, "We have lost over 300 fighter pilots in 1 week. In 1 week, we cannot sustain such losses. We are not losing a battle of tactics. We are losing a battle of attrition. The Americans are bleeding us to death." From February 1944 onwards, the terror for the Luftwaffe was no longer the sight of B-17 seconds. It was the sight of P-51 Mustangs hunting in packs 300 kilometers inside Germany. German pilots, trained to attack bombers, now had to fight through swarms of American fighters just to reach the bombers. And even if they did reach them, they were exhausted, low on ammunition, and knew that American fighters would be waiting for them on their return. The characteristic sound of aerial warfare has changed. Before, it was the roar of German radial engines climbing to intercept. Now it was the sound of the Merlin engines of Mustangs howling in a dive from 7,000 meters. A captured German pilot said, "You heard that sound, that high-pitched howl. You knew it was Mustang, and you knew he wasn't protecting bombers. He was looking for you. It became a personal war. And they had more planes, more ammunition, and could fly farther." In March of 1944, the 8th Air Force attacked Berlin for the first time, escorted by Mustangs to the target and back. The Luftwaffe lost 66 fighter planes. The Americans lost 11. Major Egon Mayer was shot down and killed over France. His last moments were spent fleeing from P-47 Thunderbolts that pursued him to the ground. The 8th Air Force was no longer just bombing targets on the ground. It was bombing Luftwaffe from outside the sky. The Doolittle doctrine represented a fundamental philosophical shift in aerial warfare. German doctrine under Göring was defensive. Fighter planes were to protect the Reich, attack only when threatened, conserve forces. The Doolittle doctrine was offensive. Our best defense is relentless attack. Don't wait for the enemy to come to you. Hunt him down, find him, destroy him. It was a boxer versus street fighter mentality. A boxer waits for an opening. A street fighter creates an opening by breaking the opponent's nose. General Karl Spaatz, commander of U.S. Strategic Air Forces in Europe, explained, "We realized we couldn't win if we tried to save every bomber, but we could win if we killed every German fighter. It was a brutal trade. Bomber crew lives for German fighter pilot lives, and we knew we could replace our pilots and planes faster than they could." American industrial superiority transformed what would have been a suicidal tactic into a winning strategy. The Luftwaffe lost 1,000 pilots in January of 1944, 1,500 in February, 2,000 in March. In May of 1944, 4 months after the start of the new doctrine, the Luftwaffe as a cohesive fighting force on the Western Front ceased to exist. General Galland wrote in his memoirs, "Doolittle turned escort fighters into packs of wolves, and the bombers were merely bait he used to lure us out of our dens. By the time we realized the trap, we were already mortally wounded, but there was a cost. Thousands of American bomber crews died on missions that were, in essence, calculated sacrifices. Their deaths bought time and opportunity for Doolittle's fighters to destroy the Luftwaffe." B-17 pilot Captain Robert Rosenthal, who survived 52 missions, said, "We knew we were bait. We called ourselves fighter bait, but we also knew that our deaths had a purpose. Every German fighter that attacked us was one that our little friends could kill. It was cold, bloody mathematics, but it worked." The 6th of June, 1944, D-Day, as 150,000 Allied soldiers landed on the beaches of Normandy, They looked to the sky and saw 11,000 Allied aircraft, and virtually no German planes. The Luftwaffe, which in 1942 dominated the skies of Europe, was broken. Broken not by bombs in its factories, but by a strategy that forced it to fight a battle of attrition it could not win. General Feldmarschall Erwin Rommel, in charge of defending Normandy, wrote in his diary on June 6, "Where is the Luftwaffe? The enemy has total air superiority. Our troops on the ground are being massacred from the air. All is lost." On the 20th of February 1944, Major Egon Mayer laughed at the idea of American bombers flying deep over Germany. "When the escorts leave, the party begins," he said. On June 6th, there was no more Luftwaffe to celebrate. It was dead, destroyed in thousands of aerial duels over Germany, lured to its destruction by bombers acting as bait. They laughed when they saw bombers seemingly alone. They laughed when they thought American fighter jets had to return home. They stopped laughing when they realized that fighter jets weren't returning, but circling overhead, waiting for wolves to attack sheep so they could then kill the wolves. They stopped laughing when they realized they weren't fighting a battle for airspace, but a battle for industrial production where every lost plane was irreplaceable. Doolittle and his fighter pilots didn't win the war with superior technology. They won with superior doctrine. A doctrine that understood that in total war, sometimes you have to sacrifice pieces to win the game. The thunder of the Mustang's Merlin engines spoke over Germany, and it was the sound of a hunt, the sound of a pack of wolves hunting other wolves. And when it fell silent in May of 45, the skies over Europe belonged to the Allies, bought with the blood of bomber crews, won by the courage of fighter pilots, and sealed by the industrial capacity of a nation that could produce more planes, more pilots, and more ammunition than the enemy could dream of destroying. Big Week proved that the bomber was not just a weapon for destroying ground targets. It was a weapon for destroying the enemy air force itself, drawing it into a battle it could not refuse and could not win. And that was the brutal genius of the American strategy. They didn't wait for the battle to come to them. They forced the battle, and they won it.